can't see myself without you. Without you, baby. Without you, no. No, I just can't see myself without you.
Folks, welcome inside the Paris Sea Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is a special edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you live on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live, download our free app, and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. And we can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today, and we're in for a treat today because we are talking to one of the most gifted multi-instrumentalists in the world. He has made his name through the last 5 decades working with some of the heaviest cats in the LA studio scene, but he came up being a jazzer, burning on the bandstand with the likes of Chico Hamilton and so many beautiful people that I've already interviewed, and what an honor. Clarence McDonald, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you so much, and good day to you.
Bless you, brother. It's so good to hear you, man. Can you talk to me, Clarence? That tune we just came in with, did you recognize that tune?
No, I didn't. What was it?
That was I Just Can't See Myself Without You by The Creative Source.
Oh, my God, Michael Stokes.
Okay, so Stokes, no, but here's what I want to talk about. That was you on keyboards, Wah Watson, who I'm slowly getting more closer to an interview. But I really want you to talk about what made, I mean, can you honestly say Spider Webb, James Jamerson, Clarence McDonald, did you guys, all having the jazz roots, all being rooted in bebop, all being rooted in jazz, is that why these albums burn so hard? That was from 1973. My daughters and I rock out because that's that Skip Scarborough. They stretched that thing out for like 8 minutes.
Well, actually, I played jazz, but my original background was from the church because that's where you got a musical training that you couldn't get anyplace else. I had the church, and then I had a music teacher named Alma Hightower. And everybody in L.A., including Dexter Gordon, Roy Ayers, all of the people who came out of L.A. got a chance to study with Miss Hightower. She was like the neighborhood genius. She could play any instrument, read anything, and she was such a sweetheart. I remember her telling my father, he said, if you don't have the money for the lessons, you bring the kids anyway. We'll settle it up later.
Yeah, I dig.
And that's where it all started for me.
I mean, all I'm saying is those were the roots. Did you have an opportunity to, when was your first experience witnessing music within the Sanctified Church?
Oh, it's like this another funny story.
Yeah, tell it.
I wanted to get in the choir, and the pastor, bless his heart, he said, son, God loves you, but if you want to get in the choir, you better learn how to play something because you can't sing. And he was right. So I started out with piano and organ just so I could get in the choir.
Okay, so did you, because all I'm trying to say is, like, I listened back to, I mean, I found these incredible gospel records, Willie Banks and the Messengers, these dudes that were coming out, like I'm talking like that's where the R&B and soul came out of. It's not contemporary. I mean, I was looking for that for a long time, and I'm hearing electric bass, and I'm hearing funk, and that to me, the picture on the record is just this little shack. It's like a church out in the middle of nowhere. Now in L.A., I know that there were sanctified churches. I was talking to Yuma Sultan, the great percussionist, about it. But because those churches, those rhythms, there was no traditional trap set in those churches.
No, there wasn't. Like I said, well, first of all, like Billy Preston, there, and Aretha Franklin, who, by the way, is an unbelievable pianist. Annette May. There was a core of maybe 10 or 20 churches in L.A., and it was just, I always used to tell people, churches were basically a party disguised as a church, because that's what it was. And when I was at O.C. Smith's church, this was later on in life, it was the same thing. On any given Sunday, you wouldn't know who'd show up. It might be Della Reese, Les McCann, you name it. It was really a party disguised as a church, and I loved it.
Can you talk about how the music grew from the community? Today we're dealing with so much transient stuff. I mean, I just had a chance to kick it with the Tower of Power Cats, and all those guys are flying in from different states to go on tour. I mean, they might take a bus from Vegas to Tucson, where I am, but I mean, ultimately, music is is in a transient space now more than ever. Can you talk about, like you talk about a party, but the truth is the music came out of the community. So can you talk about how the music grew?
Yeah, it started, like I say, back to the church. You learned stuff you didn't know you were learning. You had singers who didn't know what key they sung in, anything. They'd say, maze, and by the time it got to maze, you better be in the key they're singing it in. And basically what happened is you got a formal education that you couldn't have gotten anyplace else without knowing that's what it was you were getting. So, and speaking of Tower of Power, in the band at O.C. Smith's church, Bruce Conte was the guitar player.
Get out of here. Conte was playing guitar in the O.C. Smith church?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, the Sunday Morning Band was the name of it. It was,
I mean, that is major trivia question. I mean, I haven't gotten to Conte yet, and Victor obviously is a mercurial cat. I mean, but that is, I mean, that's right. See, that's like, did you ever get up to the Glide Memorial Church in San Francisco?
No, I used to live in Oakland. And we used to go down, and I played with Tower of Power. I think it was the Long Branch was the name of the club on San Pablo. So that was 60s.
No, we're going to have, I mean, you are right in my pocket. I mean, I'm 38 years old, man. I am trying to, this coming out, so I mean, did you know, you lived in Oakland in what years?
Excuse me. In the 60s, and I'm trying to remember what years it was. I think.
Well, I mean, let's just be. I mean, we can go back here. It's like you played. I mean, it's not always. It seems like. When did you actually come? Do you remember going into the studio scene in L.A., or were you actually commuting from Oakland to?
Oh no! I was born in L.A.
You were born. So I'm saying, like, because in the All Music Guide, the first album that shows up is Paul Humphrey and the Kool-Aid Chemists.
Oh, my God.
Okay, King Arison, People Like Us, Mamas and Papas, Mark Benno, Redbone. I mean, your chops were, it was all music to Clarence McDonald. But
yeah, I just talked to King Arison about an hour ago. That's my golf buddy.
Dude.
Yeah, I live in Henderson, Nevada now, and King is my golf buddy.
Oh, I love it, dude, because King and I did a cosmic interview about how Sean Connery discovered him. I mean, that dude is the man. But going back to Oakland, I mean, there was the Cold Duck Club. There were these old school cats, early, like James Brown-esque drummers like Kickin' Curtis Moore. He had a big stuttering Can you talk about? I've been woodshedding for a long time. I mean, to me, do you really think, Clarence, that the vocabulary of music can grow within the four walls of academia? Because what I was trying to get at before was the idea of you saying you hit the bandstand, you better know what key it was in, you got an education that you could have never gotten, and now it's been replaced by, well, let's pay this amount of money and you can go to school and get and get this book. But is there, I mean, tell me if I'm right or wrong. I mean, is there a way for the vocabulary of music to grow in academia?
In order for the vocabulary to grow, you got to be out playing. It was just like Armadillos. You can or it's like shadow boxing.
Right.
When you go in the ring, the shadow is not going to do what you want it to do. Most of what you're going to learn is being out there and making mistakes. You can't get that in school. And I need to tell you this story. The guy's name was Dr. Hugh Mullins, and it was at L.A. State. I gotten a chance to go on the road with Ray Charles, and I'm in school, and he was head of the music department, and I always accredit him with making my life much better. And I in here, what we talk about in this room stays here. He says, I'm going to tell you the truth. He says, it takes 4 years to get a degree because that's how we get paid. He says, if we could do what you're being asked to do, we wouldn't be teaching. He said, so you go, and I'll give you B's in all your classes. I'll send you midterms and finals. And I did it. And I thank him to this day, because you go to school thinking that there's a lot that you need to learn. By the time I got back off the road, half of the stuff that they were teaching in school was stuff I was playing on. So academia is good because you need the discipline to learn what to do. But the only way you're ever really going to learn is get out there, get in a nightclub, which is what's missing now. There are no joints anymore. There are no nightclubs where kids can go and play with the big guys, make mistakes. Because I can remember going into a club, and I think it was, I don't remember the song, but they were playing it in B. And, of course, I knew it in F, which means I'm a musician. And I got up there, and it was pitiful. And the guys, they didn't dog it. They said, you're going to be pretty good, but you got some work to do. You come back in a couple of weeks. Let us see what you've learned. Those are the experiences that make musicians. I call all of what I call the Guitar Institute guys, they're educated beyond their means, because now they're interested in showing how much they know instead of listening to see how much it is they need to learn.
I mean, how much of it also, I just transcribed my first interview with Joe Sample, rest in peace, and he just told this insane story about showing up at Wes Montgomery's house. The Crusaders were in Indianapolis, and Wes was playing all these wild harmonic chords, very different kind of chords, and Joe was curious, and he said, he's like, well, what chord is that you're playing? And Wes said, I don't know. And he said, well, what chord is that? And he said, I don't know. And the point is that it wasn't about an education. It was, how many cats did you know that did not have any formal music education?
Oh, because creativity in music is what comes out of your heart. Now, the fact that you got a chance to go to school and get to quantify it is great, but the real music comes from within. That's what creativity is, when you can finally open yourself up enough to let what the universe can pass through you. Because I had occasions at OC's church and we'd look at each other and just start smiling like, oh boy, we took the trip again. Because we played stuff, and God knows we had no idea what we did. I even was speaking with OC's wife, Robbie, one day. I said, I was at her house. I said, I like that. That's nice. She says, I said, who is that? She says, are you kidding? I said, no. She says, it's you. And I had to sit down and listen to it, because I don't remember playing it. I know I loved it, and I'm happy it was me it came through. But whenever you can figure out what you're getting ready to play, you probably shouldn't play it.
Wow, Clarence McDonald is already dropping a lot of knowledge, and he's not even in his best form right now. But I mean, can you definitively? I mean, Memory Lane. I have chronicled that place very heavily. Everybody from Jim Keltner to, I mean, let's see. There were. I mean, that was a joint in a big way. I mean,
I lived around the corner from Memory Lane, 800 yards maximum. I grew up at 43rd Avenue. So if you walk, it's the third house from the corner. If you walk to Santa Barbara, turn left and walk one block, you're at Memory Lane on 2nd Avenue in Santa Barbara. I used to play there with Sam Fletcher, and it was so funny because I think I was like 14 or 15 years old. So what they would make me do is go home on the break and come back.
Right. You couldn't be there with alcohol being served.
Right. So, I mean, it was just, we don't want to get the club in trouble. We want you to play. I used to play there with Sam Fletcher, Lorez Alexandria. That was one of the jumpingest places you could see, and actually played there with O.C. Smith when Marla Gibbs had the place because he came out to do a weekend there for her. But Memory Lane brings back lots of great memories.
Well, I want you to talk specifically about that time because a cat that I had a chance to joust with, and it was definitely a contentious interview, but we had fun, was Master Charles Lloyd. And I believe that Lloyd, when Lloyd was out at USC, he said that even at that time in music education, they were not teaching Ellington and they were not teaching Bird. And I really want you to talk to the audience worldwide right now about. So here we have Lloyd in academia, but yet he gave you an opportunity to play live, right, through some sort of project he set up. Can you just take us through that whole thing, because this is the fusing that we don't have today between academia and the live music setting.
Oh, this was absolutely hilarious. Charles Lloyd, who I absolutely love, I always call him the misunderstood genius.
He is. He's a total genius.
He was teaching at Dorsey High School, and I was going to Dorsey High School. And I think Jerry Peters was in the band at the time. Billy Preston was in the band. I used to play guitar voicings, or what they call guitar voicings. And when he heard it, and I already knew Chico because I lived 3 blocks from Chico. He lived on 6th Avenue. We lived on 3rd Avenue.
Oh, my gosh.
But what happened is I ended up starting to rehearse with them and then started to play with them. That was my first, what I call, professional gig. But the idea was Chico liked guitar more than piano, but I played voicings more like a guitar player would play it. So I ended up traveling with them. We go up to Haight-Ashbury on the weekend and have to drive back because I had to get to school by 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Oh, my.
But Charles Lloyd was an absolute genius. The fact that he was in school was hilarious to me because he was way ahead of him. Doing student teaching was the biggest favor we could have had because this was somebody who was a player. You know, he did the academics, but Charles could play.
Now, I just want to get some chronology. Oh, big player. You went to Haight-Ashbury and played like the Haight levels. I mean, you were just playing like these. I mean, was it the Haight before the Summer of Love, like 65 maybe 64?
Yeah, it would have been. See, I graduated high school in 62, so we would have been playing in 61 and 60.
So
I'm trying to think, was it the, I'm trying to think of the name of the club. That's when there were no chairs. You stood up.
The Haight Levels was there, and there was another club that I can't remember. I know that might have been it. I'm just curious about something just popped into my head, and then it just snuck out so easily. I mean, this is so you must have kicked it around with Johnny Mathis and Merle Saunders up there. Merle
Saunders was a dear friend of mine. Yes,
because those cats were playing in like a. I remember when I interviewed Johnny Mathis for this documentary, the Stan Getz documentary that I'm working on, and he he was talking about him and Merle playing these dances and sock hops, and they had vibes and an upright bass. But that's
Bobby Hutchinson on Vibe, and this was over in Jack London Square where everybody was playing.
so. What was? I mean, you. Oh, this is so class. So when you used to go up there to Hate, it was Lloyd. Who was in that group that you would go up with?
There was Chico Hamilton, the leader, Charles Lloyd on saxophone, Albert Stinson on bass, and me on piano.
And Bohannon wasn't in the band yet at this point, or I'm just
No.
Yeah, okay. So it was. So Stinson again coming up. I just received a package from Gary Foster of a CD of Miles Davis Quintet from Berkeley. Ron Carter couldn't make the gig. Stinson on bass. Stinson was a monster player. I know Keltner tells me he was best friends with Albert. He was saving his life, making sure he wasn't ODing it most of the time. But the dude was a
We
freaking.
all spent a little time doing that with Albert, unfortunately.
What was it? I mean, I don't want to. He had a. How did he swing so hard? What made him such a special player?
Stinson was. Well, you ever see somebody who doesn't even realize how amazing they are? He just loved music. He pursued it on a daily basis. Actually, to a point, I think music consumed him.
Yeah. And then, and the abuse. But I mean, if you, and then I think this is the larger point is that, you know, one of the L's on my show is leadership. And what I wanted to ask you about was so much of today we hang on words. We are obsessed with words. It's a very litigious society now. Everything is measured. On the bandstand, you know, whether it's if I'm talking to George Benson like I did last week, or I'm talking to Stanley Clarke, these cats are talking about Sonny Stitt, you know, Coltrane, Miles. Those cats did not always, in fact, they rarely showed leadership. I just want you to talk about Charles Lloyd or any great leaders, how they showed leadership in a nonverbal fashion on the bandstand.
Well, that is the sign of a great leader. If you spend too much time talking, you ain't leading. The idea is, first of all, lead by example. And most things that you need to learn are played, not spoken. If it's not feeling the way you want it, play it again until the person can understand. It's like the highway. There are lots of different roads that will get you to the same place. It's which one are we traveling on today? And I'll tell you who else.
I did.
Eddie Harris, who was one of the few people, every time I got a chance to play with Eddie, I'd have to go in woodshed for a week because Eddie was just unbelievable. I had the greatest time with him because this guy was a genius. Between him and Ray Charles, I mean, it was like, I was very fortunate, and I look back now and I can only smile because even when I saw your article about Chico Hamilton,
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't seen Chico in, 30, 40 years. He came to the church. He came out to O.C. Smith's church. So I got a chance to play with my first professional band leader, 40 years later, and it was just a great time. And I will say this, the one thing I found out about life when you live long enough, if you did a lot of good, it'll come back to visit you. Also, if you did a lot of bad, it'll come back to visit you, but you will be a lot less able to deal with it because time takes away a lot of the stuff. That's why I'm smiling because I've had a chance, and like with Ray Charles. I hadn't played with Ray Charles since 1965. I did the very last album, Genius Loves Company, and I'm sitting on a piano bench, and he has the nerve to say, Little Mac, because that's what he used to call me. Little Mac, I want to thank you for playing on my record. I said, are you kidding? Most of what I've played in my career, I learned from you. Because we lived about 12 blocks from each other in what used to be known as the Golden Ghetto, Windsor Hills. Everybody you could think of, Ike and Tina lived there.
Johnny Otis?
I'm trying to think who lived on Ray's block. Earl Grant. It was Earl Grant.
Wow.
Oh, Ernie Freeman. All of the guys that you can think of lived in the Golden Ghetto, and it was just the '70s was like it was a miracle time.
It was a bliss. It was so bliss. I mean, you realize I was born in 1978, so I caught the tail. I got a little bit of resin from that match, okay? A little bit, all right. But I got, all I'm saying is you guys are still around. I mean, you were just waxing poetic. I don't even know if you know what you just said about good coming back around on you. If you did a lot of good, it'll come back around, and a little bit of bad, it'll come back around. I just love I've done 700 plus interviews, and to know that at that time there was so much elasticity and so much community. That's how there was all this overlap. I mean, I guarantee you. So when we're jumping around a lot here. I wanted to read a quote from a buddy of yours, James Gadsden. He said, Eddie Harris would play 4 turnarounds. You had to be there or he might stop playing. He had a certain pattern that he wrote. No telling what he might come in, but you had to be right on it. You had to be totally into what was happening with the music. He might play in some different time signatures with his solo. He would always have certain sections that had certain patterns about them. He had certain signals. He might play 4 bars before he came in. If you weren't into what was happening, then you would miss it, and you didn't want to miss that. I mean, can you talk about how seemingly how complex, why you had a woodshed? I mean, he was a nasty player.
Oh, he was just a genius. By the way, don't ever play him pool. As good as he was on saxophone, he'd take all your money playing pool. But I had a chance. We were working on a song just before Eddie died called Perfect Day. And he was up. I had an office in Burbank, up in Compact Video, right across from NBC. And he came up to the office. And he played the melody, and we were playing around. And I think we looked at each other and both realized that he wasn't going to make it. We had a great idea for a project, but it wasn't going to happen. And I remember him saying, well, I think I better go home now. I said, well, can I carry your instrument and walk you to your car? Because we knew what we wanted to do, but we also knew that time was running out for him.
Wow.
But, yeah, you had to shed, and you should want to shed to play with Eddie Harris, right? Because it was an honor, and it was a lesson. So, yeah, every time I got a chance to play with him, I went and tried to make sure at least I could represent on the bandstand.
Well, we've been talking in a verbal fashion. I want to put this tune in here and let you marinate on it, and then we'll come back and talk about it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I choose kind of woman have a man bragging everywhere he goes. Oh, I choose you, baby.
Well, I choose you, Clarence McDonald, today on the Jake Feinberg Show. I just want to bless you, man, because I mean, in all seriousness, I think I listen to a lot of very unusual, just stuff that never was considered pop music. And every time I look at the back liner notes, horn arrangements, Clarence McDonald, keyboards, Clarence McDonald, every one of these albums that emotively strikes me as a non-musician, although I did just get a marimba, which I'm really having a ball with. You know,
all right.
You know, I mean, dude, I'm channeling Bobby Hutcherson. You know, but the thing is, I mean, can you talk about love, Clarence? Because so many of the times, that was that you know what that album was, right?
Which one is this now?
The one we just played? No, you don't. You didn't. That was Willie Hutch.
Oh my God.
The Mac. Okay, the Mac. Okay. So we're going back into the vaults here. This is what I love about Clarence McDonald. Nobody's focused on the past. He's only concerned about what's happened in the now. I mean, most of the stuff that you arranged, that you've put together, dude, I cry with that stuff, man. I cry. So I want you to talk about soul, real soul, and love. You go.
Well, that's easy because that's the sum total of music. And I have to laugh. My wife, Susan, bless her heart, she's brought me stuff. The truth of it was we were so busy doing stuff, we didn't keep up with what we were doing. We were trying to get to the next thing.
Of course.
And she came in, she says, you never told me you played on this record. And it was a show and tell, Al Wilson.
Oh, my. Yeah.
The truth of it was I forgot about it.
I'm just saying that and this is what's cool is that my show is about promotion. It's really not about preservation. It really is about emotion. It's about the humanistic qualities. I mean, can you talk, for instance, in the Mac? I remember when you open up the gatefold cover, it says Clarence McDonald, arranger, keyboards. Talk about, in your mind, in today's world, we're dealing with singers. I'm talking about primarily in pop music. There are no dynamics. Can you talk about dynamics? How you use that so effectively in this music to pull those strings? You don't have to remember specific sessions, but I'm just saying you're pulling on heartstrings, McDonald.
Well, let me say this about dynamics. I think it was quoted most famously by some young unknown musician when he said, what do you mean dynamics? I'm playing as loud as I can.
Exactly, dude. That's exactly. I mean that to me. Exactly. I mean, welcome to my generation. Bashing and no. I mean, I talked to Val Garay. I'm sure that's a cat you've worked with before.
Oh my God, over at Sound Factory. Where we cut James Taylor.
You know, he was so articulate about talking about the true talent of some of these younger singers. But what he did say is there are literally no dynamics, zero, none.
Yeah. Oh, actually, we've tried to get the police to go and pick them up for loitering in front of an orchestra. So.
I mean, can you just talk about what was your technique? I mean, we could sit here for hours and I could play you clips of these insanely obscure albums that you arrange the horns on, and it makes the album. What was your philosophy when it came to session work on how to make that stuff beautiful?
Well, the first thing is I was a trombone player. I also was a saxophone player. I had a scholarship to USC playing euphonium and tuba. So I knew the instruments. A lot of the guys, especially piano players, they write notes. But if you don't know where the meat of the instrument is, if you don't know what plays well on an instrument, you're just a guest at the party. And that, unfortunately, is what's happened with lots of music guys. because they're writing for instruments. I had one guy came in for trombone, had a B to B flat trill, and I told him, I said, if you ever play trombone, that's 1 to 7. That trill will never happen. And the idea, well, it's on my business card too, which is nothing is so impressive as the sound of a well-played rest. Well, the idea is how you can play as few notes as possible and make them cover as many miles as possible. Nowadays, it appears that it's been turned around where let me play every note I ever thought I knew in the first 2 beats of the intro, and then we'll go from there. So most of it was based on taste. It's back to church again.
Right.
Follow the singer and make a nice, comfortable bed for them so where they can wallow in the music.
And what about, I'm going to read you something from one of your dear friends, Leland Sklar, one of our 5 interviews. He said, I really find this, so this is different from what you just riffed on, which was extremely important. Again, this is important for people that want to produce and arrange with taste. He said, I really find this, especially with vocalists, when you're doing projects today, you see a guy or a girl come in and they're sitting there doing 30 vocals. Then they're going to sit and comp this whole thing together and run it through auto-tune. Then do some correcting. If it's not good enough, they'll bring in a studio singer to ghost some of it just to make it sound a little bit better. I don't think Willie Hutch was ghosting. You weren't bringing in ghost singers. I mean, what is it about this need? Where have we gotten, Clarence, I mean, you can say it's electronics. You can say it was disco. You can say it was the drum machine. You can say it was cocaine. You can say it was the music leaving the no studio scenes anymore. But where did we get so hung up on this idea of perfection? In fact, jazz to me, the most perfect thing about jazz is its imperfection. And
see, that's the problem. Most people, like you said, you strive for perfection, you lose your soul. So they came in looking for the wrong, like you said, on the highway again. They started out on the wrong highway, so there's no way it was going to work. No, why would you want something that didn't have the human quality? Humans aren't perfect, and the music shouldn't be either. Yeah, by the time they get through using auto-tune, and all of these other things, it's like, that's not real life, which is the reason when their machines break down, they can't sing out in public. Why? Because it wasn't real to start with.
You're darn right. No, that was the other part of the quote from Sklar was the idea. He's like, if I was in the studio with James Taylor, Linda Ronstadt, or Jackson Brown, you put a microphone in front of those cats, 1 or 2 takes, you knock it right out. They were real musicians. And
Thank you.
And that's the other part of it, Clarence, is when did you start to seriously see total lack of authenticity in music? Because you were marinating in this time in the 70s when there was basically complete authenticity, and then, of course, these insane budgets to create this authentic music. When did you see this inauthenticity start to creep into the arts, specifically music?
Well, I can't tell you what year it was, but it was over at the Sound Castle on Rowena. I had gotten a call to do a session. I got there, and the guy was nice. He says, Mister, and he was like, I'm sorry, but we have to frisk you. And they had metal detectors. And I said, no, you don't have to frisk me. I said, if whatever people are doing here is so bad that even when they're making music, somebody's trying to harm them, I said, I'm done. And I did. I turned around. I got in my car. I went home. And I started playing golf. I didn't take any more sessions. And the bad thing was 2 weeks later, 2 people got shot there at the Sound Castle. And I just realized, I said, this is so far off the rails. Everything that we used to live for, they don't even see this. The other thing that happens, you go in and you do a session, because I work with some of the rappers, and basically the sad thing was they'd taken music out of the school system, so the kids were just uneducated. Right. They would be asking, well, can you play like this? It's like, play like that? That is me. And I just started to realize no research, no background, no direction. And I felt very bad because the kids, they have expression. They want to express what's coming on in their generation. They didn't get the tools to do it, and that's just really blatantly unfair.
I really, you're hitting on so much Great stuff. I mean, if you could, when you're on the 16th hole with King, and you're thinking about today's paradigm, and I'm not saying, because let's just, music's not coming back into the schools anytime soon. I mean, I really actually think, I love what Herbie's been advocating, Herbie Hancock and other people trying to tie it into mathematics and make it relevant and create funding for that. But assuming that music is not coming back into the schools and that they don't have that kind of education, what is your advice to cats that are unplugged, are not saturated with YouTube, and want to create and learn and actually develop the rudiments and the substance and create new vocabulary in music? What would be some of the things you would just tell them to do in this paradigm now?
To go write and play what you feel, keep all of the mistakes, and put it out on YouTube or CD Baby and let people hear it. Because now that we've tried to totally quantify creativity, we just about killed it. But you can't kill an idea. Ideas don't die. So I hope that people don't get so disgusted that they give up on great ideas, because I've met some great young players and singers. It's just, they think, and I keep telling them, please don't think that you have to compete with what it is you hear on the radio, because if you do compete with it, you've already lost.
Yeah, well, I mean, and then that takes a lot of you need to be a secure person in order to put yourself out there. Can you talk about a time in your career early on when you hadn't totally found your voice yet, and you pushed yourself into unknown territory, and it turned out to be the most emboldening thing for Clarence McDonald?
Oh, I can think of one directly. I don't remember what session it was, but a guy asked me, "Hey, man, do you write for strings?" Of course. Okay, we're going to need this. I walked out of the door. I called Janice Gower, who I went to school with, who was a concert master. I went over. I said, "I need help, and I need it quick. I need you to explain to me the bowing. I'm going to write this out. You tell me what part of this is dumb, and I'll do the inversions and make it work out." And 3 months later, I was a renowned string writer.
So in between that, talk about those. What were the nuanced things that you did to get yourself up to speed?
Listen, the thing I found out is if you go in, I got to tell you this story.
Do it.
Mike Dacey is his name.
Yeah, I know. Dude, he played with Cannon, man.
Well, I walked in on my first big session. I was over Capitol Records, and there's a bunch of strings, and, it was funny, and I came in, and nobody would talk to me. It was kind of like, and especially, unfortunately, the brothers were like, okay, he's going to mess up, make it bad for us. And I was scared. But I came in, I sat down there, and the least likely source, Mike Dacey, came over. He says, "Is this your first big session?" I said, "Yeah," and I'm scared to death. He says, "Tell you what, if there's anything on there that you can't read, I'll play it for you because I know you can hear it. And by the way, screw the rest of these guys and have a good time."
Aww.
And for me, I don't even know if he remembers, but I've had occasion to do the same thing to several musicians, because the only thing that you're fearing is the fact that you think there's something to be afraid of. But that was the one thing that got me through. I made my big day to Capitol. After that, I had no fear.
Wow, that's so beautiful, man. I mean, did you know Kenny Gradney?
I remember the name.
Because, Kenny, the reason that actually we're even on this is because doing this thing right now is because you responded to that Chico, that article, and that was an excerpt from my interview with Kenny Gradney, whose brother, he knew Forrest Hamilton. I think it was Chico's son. And,
yeah, Forrest and I went to school together.
Right, so Kenny grew up with Johnny Otis. Kenny wound up being the bass player with Little Feat, but then he wound up doing a couple albums with, because Forrest wound up being the head regional head of Watts Stax on the West Coast. You know that, obviously.
Yes.
And then so he wanted to help his dad out, and so he put together these 2 albums that actually had Little Feat as the rhythm section. So Gradney's playing with Chico, but he might have been a little bit younger than you. Can you talk about? I think the other thing that can't be glossed over. I mean, the idea that there were these insane. Can you just talk about a James Taylor session from the mid '70s? The Woman's Gotta Have It. I mean, you had the picture on that from the inside gatefold has about 40 musicians, including yourself, and it's kind of like it just seemed to me like in truth you had all these people like yourself who were very well schooled, and also there was a lot of money. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about what a session like that looked like, because it seemed to me that everybody was hitting in the same room at the same time.
Well, James Taylor, and I'm going to need your help with this because he's a dear friend of mine, keyboard player, and he played with a group in New York called Stuff.
That was Richard T.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I could. Richard T. was supposed to come to L.A. and play with James Taylor. I was going to New York to do a project. As it turned out, his thing didn't happen, and mine didn't happen. And Russ Titleman called me. He says, "Well, Mac, James is thinking about doing a tune, How Sweet It Is. Can you play that?" I said, "Oh, I think I probably can." So
I love it.
I met with them. But the sessions, Peter Asher was always fun. All the people were fun. Everybody just came in, listened to the music, listened to the singer, and tried very hard to complement what was being done. That was the sum total of all of the music. It was the same thing with Seals and Croft. When we did that, everybody just came in and was like, what can I do to help? Because I can remember days where you'd be doing 5 sessions a day. You'd walk right out of one place in A&M Records with Barbra Streisand.
Right.
And then you go to, now I can't call her name, Blonde in the Bleachers, Joni Mitchell.
Sure.
And then you go into a Herb Alpert session and a Lonnie Hall session, and that'll all happen in one day.
And then then you're playing on Dennis Coffey album.
Yeah.
I mean, this is so ridiculous. I mean, what was it when you work with some of the modern day cats, the hip hoppers, the rappers? Does it look anything in the sense like, are there live musicians? I mean, is it all beats? Are you playing piano? I mean, can you talk about what that looks like as opposed to you and you and Sklar and Willie Weeks and these cats just locking the groove and laying it down?
Yeah, it's very different from where we came from. Now, I'll tell you who we did work with that really had a good time was with Justin Timberlake.
Oh, break that down. Break it down.
Justin Timberlake, his 2 favorite acts were Al Green and Bill Withers.
Oh, wow.
And I had just played with Al Green over at the Shrine, and then I used to produce Bill Withers. So he ended up getting James Gatson, Benoist Blackman. Basically, the average age on his Future Sex record was 61 or 62.
Oh, wow. I did.
And he was an absolute sweetheart to work with. He came in, had ideas, collected ideas, and made music. That was fun. With the rapper guys, and like I say, they're not bad guys at all. They're just operating the best they can with what they were given to work with. But no, what we had for making records, that's not coming back again. That was a culmination of education, thought, love, and communication. And that's pretty much gone.
Is it too simplistic to say for younger brothers that the church is no longer of the place that it once was? Is that what? And I mean, taking music obviously in the school systems away, But
no, none of it is as it once was. I always tell people I was born in L.A. and I remember when my wife told me, "Why are you staying here?" And I thought about it. You're living in the 40s and 50s and 60s and even 70s was great, but it's over. And you had a great time. Nothing lasts forever. So, no, it's not like it was because the education, the forethought, the love, and the parenting is gone.
And is it also the patience? I mean, do we have the ability to? I just talked to a drummer, Joe Vitale, and he said, it's like maybe I do it once, then I'd have to do the drum take again, and then I do it 10 more times, and if it still wasn't working, I'd come back the next day. He goes, I hear younger cats today saying, well, we'll fix it with Pro Tools. We can mask this. We can do this. I mean, is it that there's this sort of there's
it's a different level.
Yeah, but
it's
I mean, there's right.
It's a different level of refinement. It used to be getting over. Now it's called getting by. And it's not everybody.
Yeah.
But like I said, it was just kind of like being in the service. When you had to get up early, work hard, and have a goal and finish it, it worked. If you never had to do that, that whole idea and discipline is foreign to you.
Man, why do you say everything so prophetically? Who is your biggest, influence from, from a gospel, setting, playing, insofar as not even if they were coming at it not even if it was Christian rock or gospel rock or gospel funk, but just some of the pastors that used to inspire you in the way that Vassar Clemens, the great fiddle player. I mean, these guys, so many of these old school cats, they could say 5 words and it was the most prophetic thing in the world. You just find yourself the wisdom. Who can you talk about a few unsung cats that really infused you with wisdom?
I can tell you the very first one, the one I love most dearly, was my father, because he is the one who showed me how to be a man by being one. Second would be O.C. Smith, because I watched him as a pastor and leader do what I thought a pastor and leader should do. And my first church, Reverend K.L. Givens, was a lady. Those were the people who gave me the understanding, and they did it by example. And I have to tell you this story because just when you think you know enough, you find out you don't know much. O.C. Smith was dealing with a musician, and the guy just lied to him. And I always had somewhat of a short fuse. And I turned around and said, O.C., you got to know that this, and as I'm saying, you got to know, and I see this smile on his face. And then I realized, obviously he knows. He probably knows better than you do. And he said something to me that required me to go home and sit down and just think. He says, I would rather give him a couple of $100 than embarrass him. And those were the kind of lessons that showed me everybody knows the words. Very few people know what it's like to live the words. But between O.C. Smith, my father, and another gentleman, Gerald Jones, who was my idea of the man's man, that's where I got my inspirations from. Oh, and Ray Charles. Please don't let me forget that.
Well,
Ray Charles was like my mentor.
I think this is important for myself as a father and a husband. What is a man's man in your book, please?
A man's man is someone who will see the situation, right or wrong, and understand what he has to do to get through it, to get to where he needs to go. Like I said, you can be dead right or dead wrong, but you can be dead either way. The idea is being smart enough to know, don't get distracted by the dummies. Where do I need to get to, and how can I get past this to take me and my family where I need to go? Because I remember telling my father, I had to be 35 years old. I went to his house one day and told him, Dad, I really want to thank you because now I know what you had to go through to get us to where we were. And he just looked at me and smiled. He says, I'm glad that my kids will finally think of me as an adult. He went on back to doing what he was doing. But no, being a man is a 24-hour-a-day job. And the sad part is because most families, at least in the hood, are broken, they got no examples.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's and that's everywhere now. It's all over the place. You know, I'd love, if possible, I'd love to do part 2 with you in the real near future, because there's a few more things I wanted to get to, but we've already been cooking for an hour here.
Oh my God! You know what? First of all, thank you, because that was enjoyable, and I didn't realize how much time had gone by.
I mean, I got Steve Grossman, the horn player, coming up next. Otherwise, I'd just keep riffing with you. But let's just stay in touch. And I mean, I'll send you send me your email through private message, and I'll send you a link to this, and then we'll do part 2.
Okay. Well, I had a great time, and for all of those who are listening, I'm not done yet.
No way.
I'm writing some songs with a few people, Sonny Charles and a few other folks, because that's the other thing I want to say before we end.
Do it.
You got to have great songs to make great music, and we've been missing a lot of that. So I thought I was going to my rocking chair and go out in style in old age, but I'm going back and I'm writing songs with people that know how to write a melody and a story, and see if we can put something out that people can sing and play.
I can't wait to hear it, man. Love always, Clarence. Great to hear you, man.
Thank you much. You made my day. I will be looking forward to doing this again in the future.
Tell King I send my love, dude. I love that cat.
I will do it. I'll see him in the next few days.
All right, Clarence. Love you, buddy. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
Later
Bye-bye.
on, man. Bye-bye. And we'll be right back with Steve Grossman on the Jake Feinberg Show.
Once upon a time, a good friend of mine told me to tell you what I say today. Do the things that keep a smile on her face. Say the words that make her feel better every day. Yeah. You bet you better keep on your P's and Q's. If you don't, woman, you could easily lose. Whoa, 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 whoa. I had a love, a true love, and I lost it. No one seems to understand about the pain that it cost me. The woman got to have it. I believe that I should know. She got to know that she's needed around. When you kiss her, you got to make her feel it every day, boy. She got to know that you're not walking on shaky ground. Think it over. Don't take for granted the smile upon her face. Check a little bit closer, you might find a tear trace. Maybe the little girl never said a mumbling word, but she's got to know that her voice is heard. Whoa, 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 I had love. It was a true love and I lost it. Now I'm suffering all this pain that the true love cost me. A woman got to have it. I believe she got to know